All right. So the first thing is to look at the answers for 1 through 10. All right. So let's just go through those real quick. And then if you have a question, you can let me know. All right. So number 1 was A. Number 2 is C. 3 is A. 4 is D. 5 is B. So far, so good? All right. Yeah, sure. A, C, good. And then A, D, B. And then we had C, D. And then 8, D, 9, B. And 9 is a really important problem. Most kids have trouble with that. All right. So let's talk about that real quick. How'd you do on? Did you get number 9 correct? Yeah. Very good. Very good. All right. So again, I always tell kids if they want the total area of a coastal city was 92.1, of which 11.3 square miles is water. If the city had a population of 621,000 people in the year 2010, which of the following closest to the population density? Now here's the key. People per square mile of land, right? So the people were what? 621,000 per land area. So I had to find the land area. And the land area was 92.1 minus 11.3. Agree with that? And so then that was divided by 80.8 because that's what that was subtracted. Good on that? All right. Very good. All right, that was kind of tricky. Is that good for you? Make sense? All right. So does anybody else want me to go over anything 1 through 9?
Did the answer 9 B?
Yes, it was B. All right, so everybody's good on 1 through 9. That's what I was hoping. All right. Again, those should be kind of the, easier problems for you. All right. And then last week we started with 10, didn't we?
Yeah.
Right, and we went all the way through what? What did we get through?
We finished at...
Did we end up doing 19, right? That was the hard one, right? Yeah, and that's the last one I think I remember doing with you guys, right? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I just want to go through each page and tell you the answers because these are harder, and I want you to tell me if you don't know something, all right, if you're not sure. All right, very important. So 20 was C, 21 was D, and number 22 was B. What do I need to do for you guys?
I didn't get 21.
All right, let's get 21 real quick. All right? Now, listen to me. On this, I always try to tell kids this about the median. Most kids tell kids to line things up and cross out front, back, front, back, front, back until you get to the middle, right? Well, this level, you're supposed to be good enough to realize, okay, if there's 21 problems, if there's 21 numbers, there really isn't one exactly in the middle, right? Until you start thinking about, okay, if I divide it up, there would be 10 on each side. Everybody agree with that? And then the what? The one that's right in the middle is the 11th term. All right, the one in the middle is the 11th term, right? So what we're doing is we're looking for the 11th term. So what I want to do is I'm going to erase this up. And does everybody see there's 4 plus that 4 gives me 8. This would be the 9th. This would be the 10th. And so the 11th number would have to be a 15. Does that make sense? Right? I think that's the way you should do these. All right? Everybody good with that now? All right? So I'm happy with that. Now, what about everybody good with 20 and 21? 21 is a really nice problem. 21 is really nice. Any explanations? If you haven't had statistics, let me show you 21. All right. Now, this one I really kind of wanted to talk about anyway because it just goes to show you how people don't understand statistics very well, right? So if you take a sample of something, of a population, does that mean the population matches exactly what your sample is? No. It doesn't have to, right? It's possible, but it doesn't have to. You agree with that? So what they're saying in here is that the sample, and here this is the important part, it says that the sample contained 150 largemouth bass, of which 30% weighed more than 2 pounds. Right? So does that say anything about the majority in the pond weigh less than 2 pounds? Right?
I'm going to assume that 70% weighs less than 2 pounds. If 30% weighs more, it's 70 or less.
Yes. So 30% weighed more than 2 pounds. So does that mean that the majority of all fish in the pond weighed less than 2 pounds? You with me on that? Because they're talking about specifically a type of fish. Does that make sense? That's why, again, I think reading is the most important part here. Does that make perfectly good sense to you? All right, let me know. Then the next one, it says that the average weight of all fish. Well, again, we're talking about a specific fish, not all fish. You agree with me on that? So that's why I could quickly knock out A and B. Now it says approximately 30% of all fish in the pond weigh more. Again, they're talking about what? All of them. And we're talking about a specific type of fish. Do you agree? So does that help you now? Is everybody good? So that's why the answer I thought was pretty easy. D. There's been a problem like that on the last couple tests. All right? So let's move on then, if everybody's happy. All right? Let's take a look now at 23, 24, and 25. 23 is C. 24 is D. And 25 is B. Now, of these, 24 is the one that's really important because that's just a formula that most kids forget. All right? Most kids forget that formula. All right? Anybody in particular you want me to do? Is 23 good? Let's do 24. All right, so look at 24. All right. So percent of increase. The percent of increase is always the change divided by the original amount. The change divided by the original amount. All right. So we went from what? We went from 75, 74 to 79, 86. Agree with that? So the formula is the change divided by the original amount. So take out your calculator and tell me what the change is. How much? 4.12. And divided by the original, which would be what? 75.74. That sound good? And now if you divide that out, it came out to be. You agree with that now? Everybody good? Or close enough, right? Close enough. You got it? All right, don't be shy, man. Speak up.
If you didn't remember the formula, can you just plug in?
Yeah. That's what we're going to say, too. I was going to show you two ways on this one because I think they always have a question with percent increase or decrease. So listen carefully. You said something super smart. You could have just taken this. Now, to save ourselves some time, though, this is what I want you to do. I want you to multiply 75.74 times 1.041. You agree with that?
Why 1.0?
Well, because if it's an increase of 4.1%, 100% plus that.
I multiplied it by 0.041 and then added it to 75.7.
That's perfect. That's a good way to do it as well. All right.
I did that for all of them. I didn't remember.
And now you see it was D, right? Does that make sense, what we're doing? All right. All right, now let me try to show you something else, what I teach kids. Because this is how I learned, because when I forgot a formula, I knew I could probably figure it out. So here's, watch what I'm telling you on this. Never forget this. So if you're at $100, and now you have $110, most people can say that's 10%, right? That's a 10% raise. Right? Because 10% of 100 is 10, you add it to 110, right? Well, that's how I would figure it out. I knew 10%, that situation. So what is 10%? 10% is 10 over 100, right? So what's the difference? 10 over the original amount. Everybody see how I remember the formula? All right, that makes sense to you? All right, change divided by the original amount is always the percent of increase or decrease. And I always, like I said, I always used to make myself up little situations where I could see what that answer was. All right? Anybody else now? Remember, it's your test coming up next weekend, so you got to ask me if you're not 100%. Don't be afraid. All right? Is everybody good? Number 25 was a nice little problem, right? Anybody have any questions with 25? All right, let's move on. All right, now 26 looks hard, but it's easy. So everybody take a look at 26. Should have had C. 27 was A. And 28 was A also. All right. Everybody good?
I didn't know 28.
28? All right, I'll show you how to do 28. Kind of easy. All right, how about the gear problem? That's a really good problem. All right, you got that one? You get that? You okay with 28? Let me show you real quick. Let's look at it. Or 26. What about 26? I'm sorry. Did you get 26 correct? Okay, so let's look at it real quick. Very, very important problem here. So we have gear A, right, is rotating at 100 revolutions per minute. Just means it goes around 100 times every minute. Now look, everybody take a look at gear C. Because I didn't have to do any work on this. I just looked at it and said, well, this is the only answer. It has to be. Right? So if gear A goes around 100 revolutions per minute, would gear C have to go around more or less than that? It'd have to go around more. Do you agree? Because it's smaller. So right off the bat, I knew it couldn't be what? A or B. Does everybody agree with that? And now, if you look carefully, A is exactly twice as big as C. Does that make sense? So if A goes around, if A goes around 100 times, C would have to go around 200 times. Is that a good explanation for you on that one? That makes sense? All right. Now, 1,000, right, doesn't make sense. All right, because that would have to be 10 times bigger. Everybody good with that? You good? All right. I thought that was an excellent, different, unique problem that most people look at and go, I don't know how to do it. All right? But that's what I'm trying to show you. Even if you don't know how to do it, you should be able to say, look, C is smaller than A. So if A goes around 100 times, that would have to go around more than 100 times. You agree? All right. We have done 27. Does anybody need me to refresh on 27? Completing the square?
I completed the square, but then I
Made a mistake?
Yeah, I got C.
All right, so let's look.
Get 25.
Let's look where your mistake is. All right, so I'm going to start over here. All right, so let's look at all this. All right, now again, they have this question on every test. So I need everybody to make sure they have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. H and k is the center and r is the radius. That's what you must know. All right. Now, to put it in that format, you have to complete the square. The problem is most people forgot that the leading coefficient has to be a 1. So I have to divide everything through by 2. When I divide everything through by 2, I get x squared minus 3x, and I tell my kids to leave a space, plus y squared plus y, leave a space, equals, and half of 45, I would just put down 22.5. You hear that so far?
36.
Oh, I don't know. It's, yeah. I started to say something and then I lost my thought. So it's 3. Do you agree with that? All right. So there we go. Thank you. So it's x squared minus 3x. Now, you take half and square to complete the square. So half of 3, 1.5. 1.5 squared is 2.25. So you're going to add 2.25, add 2.25. Then half of 1 is 1/2. Squared is 0.25. Right? So this is going to be 0.25. Do I agree? So now, if we needed to find the center, we could, because it always factors into whatever the half was. So it's x minus 1.5 squared plus y plus 1/2 squared, and then equals, if I add that up, I think that adds up to 25, doesn't it? Right? So now r squared equals 25, so r equals 5.
Did you have to divide everything by 2?
Yes.
Or you've just done like each?
Well, to me, the leading coefficient has to be a 1.
But I didn't do the 45. I took like a 2 and then put it in front of the first one.
No. That was your mistake, right? Because for a circle, the coefficient here is always a what? Is always a 1. So if there's a 2 there, you should just learn automatically divide it by 2.
No, you can't have a number even in front of it.
All right. That's the same way if you're working on conics now, like the ellipse. You notice it's always, x minus h squared over a squared. This is still a 1. Okay. All right.
Square. What's the little equation?
You say b over 2 and then square. That's kind of like the equation. You half and square the middle term, and the middle term is b. You okay with that? All right.
Good. Formula on top. That's for
Circle.
Yeah.
Yep, that's for a circle. All right. Very, very important. I promise you it's on the test every single time. All right. Now, what about 28, guys? All right. Now listen to me. On 28 now, I'm going to erase this again so I can show you something. All right. Now this one, I always try to tell my kids, is important because if you forget, this is how you would go about it. Because a lot of people don't remember how to solve absolute value equations, right? So what I try to show kids is how are you going to figure things out, all right? So to figure this out, it says 2 different points on a number line. So I'm drawing a number line, and it says 2 different points are 3 units away from -4. So I put -4 down, and if I'm 3 units away, I would be talking about -1, and I would be talking about what? -7. Right? Just to show you, this right here is 3 units away, and this right here is what? 3 units away. Does that make sense? All right? So now let's talk about it. All right? I don't know how to do the equation, right? But I'm going to write this down here for letter A. X plus 4 equals 3. Now, what number, right, could I put in there to make it a 3? There's your answer. -1. Because if I plug -1 in, -1 plus 4, absolute value of that is definitely equal to 3. That's why one answer was negative 3. You agree with that? And then you could plug what? Negative 7 in. All right, then you could plug negative 7 in, right? And you could see that negative 7 plus 4 is negative 3, absolute value negative 3. So I knew that was the answer. Do you understand what I said? All I did was I just plugged in the numbers, right? Please tell me, because I do think this is another kind of a unique problem that you're not going to see over and over. It's just one of those where you're trying to think through things. And that's what I'm trying to show you, the process of thinking through so you can come up with the answer. That makes sense what I did there? Right now what I'm going to do is, because I have seen on the exams, solve an absolute value inequality. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to solve this absolute value inequality down here. We're going to solve it properly. All right? So I'm going to put again x plus 4. I'm going to put x plus 4 equals 3. Now here's how to solve an absolute value. You always write the solution, all right, without the absolute value first. So we say x plus 4 equals 3. Then you say x plus 4 can equal what? Negative 3. Now why do we do that? Because the absolute value of 3 equals 3, and the absolute value of negative 3 equals 3, agreed? So what's inside can be 3, or what's inside the absolute value can be what? Negative 3. And then just solve that normally. So if I add 4 to that, x would be 7. If I subtract 4, actually, if I subtract 4, it would be negative 1. Subtracting 4 would be negative 1. Subtracting 4, it would be negative 7. All right, that makes sense now? That's a really good review of absolute values. Everybody happy with that? All right. Now I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have 2 more supposedly hard ones, all right, on this part. All right. Now, again, if you got number 29 right, pat yourself on the back. That was probably the hardest one to understand, because there's a key word that I want you to talk about. Number 30, I feel like just everybody should have gotten 30. Because if you do what I'm telling you, you're supposed to highlight the graph. All right? So let's look at number 30. All right? Now it says, a motor powers a model car so that after starting from rest, the car travels s inches in t seconds, where s is 16t square roots of 2, or square roots of t. Which of the following gives the average speed? First of all, everybody should now know average speed is a slope. All right? Average speed is another word for slope. And of course, if you don't know that, it's kind of hard to do the problem. All right? So you have to underline that. You have to write down next to average speed of the car, that means the slope. All right? So with slope requires what? 2 points. With slope requires 2 points. So I have to figure out what 2 points are they talking about so I can come up with the slope. So the next hard part was this. A motorboat starting from what? Starting from rest. That's the hard part. If you overlook that word, you can't really do the problem. So when the car is at rest, its time is what? 0. Is everybody with me? And like I said, that's hard. All right? So the first point would be 0, 0. Now how did I get that? Because once I knew it was 0, I plugged in 0 for t, ended up with 0, 0. Everybody good with that? Now, I thought it was hard because then it said over the first t seconds. Well, I want it to be a number. I don't want it to be a variable. Is everybody with me? So that's why this was also hard. Because it doesn't matter what t is, they're saying. All right? Use t as that ordered pair. So what does that mean? That means that you're going to use the point t, comma, right? T, comma, and then you're going to do what? Then you're going to plug it in, and when I plug it in, I get 16t square roots of t. Now please ask me a question if you're not understanding what I'm saying on that, because I think that's a hard problem. All right, does everybody agree? That makes sense now, right? It's hard at first because most people overlook at rest. At rest, it's t equals 0. Is everybody happy with that explanation now? We're not done yet, because now I have the 2 points. I have to find the what? I have to find the slope, right? And the slope formula, remember, was m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And now from there, it is 16t radical t minus 0 over t minus 0. And if I simplify that, that's 16t radical t over t. And now what happens to the t's here? They cancel. That was really tricky, I thought. Really, really tricky. Because, again, it just shows how well you're reading. Does that make sense now? Again, please ask me. If I'm not clear, you got to tell me now. All right? Because, to me, the most important problems are the one at the end, because most people miss those. And I really feel like they're not as hard if you sit and think carefully and read it carefully. That's the biggest mistake, I think. All right? Now, be mad at yourself on number 30 if you didn't sketch this out. Please do yourself a favor. Draw your line of best fit. That's what I did. If you draw the line of best fit, you know the parabola is opening what? Down. So everybody agree with me? The parabola opens down. If it opens down, I know it's not what? A or C. You're right. The A has got to be negative. Now, the other important point is, of course, the y-intercept. The y-intercept is somewhere around 720. So here we have our y-intercepts. Here and here. It's not negative, do you agree? So the answer is D. All right, the answer is D. All right. How'd you feel about that? Good now? Is that everybody's clear on those? All right. And hopefully you understand I'm trying to, over these last 3 weeks, I'm trying to tell you how important the details are. If you want to get that 700, to me it's about reading the details and being able to get the detail out of the question. Does that make sense? All right. So now, let's look at these real quick. Let's see if you did these. All right, flip over, please. 31 and 32. And if you didn't get a chance to do them, don't worry about it. All right? But 31 was 10. 32 is 31. All right? 33, you had choices. It could have been 97, 98, 99, 100, or 101. That was easy. Most kids don't like picking a number between. They want to know an exact answer. I'm trying to tell you they don't care. All right? But then what happened? You had to round. I had a couple kids miss this because they didn't round what it said. Right? A lot of people put down 97.01 or something like that. It was silly, but they got it wrong. All right? So you have to understand they talk a lot about rounding in several questions. All right? 34 is a calculator problem. It's so easy to graph. Under y1, 3x squared minus 14x. Under y2, x. Boom, look at the graph on the calculator. It crosses at 5, 5, and 0, 0. So your answers were 0, 0, or 5, 5. You just looked at the calculator. And 0, 0 was already given. 0, 0 was already given. All right? So the only possible answer then was 5, 5. All right? Let's go to the next one. 35 was 5/4. Now again, I want everybody to highlight the x-intercept because they're starting to ask questions about the x-intercept. What is the x-intercept? The x-intercept is when the y value is what? 0. When the y value is 0. So what do? We just plug 0 in for y and solve.
I graphed that.
And you can graph it on the calculator. And It'll show you right where it's at. All right? And the answer worked out to be 5/4 or 1.25. All right? But essentially just plugging 0 in for y. If I ask you what the y-intercept is, you should be able to tell somebody that's when the x value is 0. All right? Okay, remember what I told you about the average problem. 100% of the time it's on the test. All right, and this one is a little different spin on it. All right? But the answer came out to be 2.6. Did you get that right?
Yeah, but
Do you want me to show you?
guessing.
Yeah, let me show you. Simple. Let me show you. Everybody listen carefully on this one. Very simple problem. All right? So the first thing we do is we see this. It says Andrew and Maria each collect 6 rocks, and the mass of the rocks are shown in the table above. The average of the mass of Maria's is 1 kilogram greater than the average of Andrew. So it's easy to figure out what Andrew was, right? Andrew is definitely what? 2.8. You get that? Everybody with me? So again, to find the average, you add them up and divide by the number of rocks. And there are 6 rocks, so you add them up, divide by 6, you get 2.8, right? So now it says Maria is 0.1 kilograms greater. So that means her average has to be what? Her average has to be 2.9. You agree with that? Now, if you recall, I said for average problems, we don't care about the average. We want to know what the total is. So what do? You take 2.9 and multiply it by 6. All right? And if you do 2.9 and multiply it by 6, I think you get 17.4 is the total weight. You agree with that? So Maria's total weight was 17.4. Well, I'm missing 1 rock. So all I do is do what? Subtract out those other 5. Or you can add them and subtract. All right? Again, like I said, I really don't want anybody to miss an average problem. All right? I don't think that was too bad. Are you comfortable with what I said on the average? Again, if you don't know how to do average problems, you're going to increase your score right off the bat if you now know. Is that good? Easy. Very easy. Average, always find the sum. All right?
I just guess 3
And you just keep going down, up and down until you get it. All right? Now let me show you something since you said that. Look right here so you don't have to guess anymore. Watch me. We knew the average was 2.9, right? Everybody look at this. This is a great way to do average. So right now I'm plus 0.2. Right now I'm minus 0.2. Right now I'm even. Right now I'm plus 0.4. Right now I'm minus 0.1. So I ended up being a plus 0.3. So I had to do a minus 0.3. So 2.6. That's a nice, easy way to do that also. That's how we do it if we're 5 points above or below, right? You keep a running tab about how far away you are from your average. Right, that's the easiest way actually, but that's a really good way. Really good way. All right, I'm happy with that. All right. Now, 37. Did you get 30 for 37? That's a hard one. You weren't sure exactly, right? But did you end up figuring?
I found it, but I did
It took a while, right? Okay. All right, here we go. It's okay. All right, so I'll show you real quick. I'm going to show you 2 options, all right? So first of all, we know that we double each year. Do you agree? So that means I want $480 in my account, right? So the first thing I did was, okay, if I want $480 in my account, I have to cut it in half. So 240. 120, 60, 30. Now, some of my kids accidentally said what? That's 5 years and not 4. So I'm saying, but is this really a year?
It's 4 times.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is the first year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year. I just feel like everybody should be able to go backwards on that. Does that make perfectly good sense? And to me, I wouldn't even do the algebra on that. It's just too easy to take half of 480 the right number of times. Now again, if you'll notice, I put this down here just because I wanted to make sure I was correct. Right? So I put the years. 2005, 2004, 3, 2, 1. And I really had to say to myself, because they like to trick you with the years, you know, this was not the first year, all right? This is actually the what? The first year, all right? That's the first year, all right? Hopefully you understand what I mean on that, all right? And finally, all right, now 38. Here's what we need on this one. Did you get this one right? Very good. That's very good. All right, very smart. All right, so the last one here was 8. All right, did you get a chance to look at it, really? All right, did you get a chance to look at it? So what I'm going to do for you guys is, at the end of class, what we're going to do is I'm going to email everything to you. So if there's something you didn't do, you can look back. Are you with me? And you can kind of see my notes. Does that make sense? All right. And then while we're working, I'm going to probably be easier for me to just come around and have you, I'll just have you email it right off the bat so we don't have to rush. All right. Is everybody good on that? Everybody understand that? All right. So now what I want to do is